Armchair Explorer is a part of the Voyescape podcast network. Check out all of their shows from around the world at voyescape.com. This episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know, we've all got that one friend, haven't we? That one who finds all the best travel deals, picks the right cards, and somehow ends up in first class for the price of coach. Well, now you can be that friend because Smart Travel is like him or her, but in podcast form. They cover all things travel finance, like how to get real value from points, not just a tiny little reward at the end of checkout, or which flight deals are actually deals and not just clickbait, or when that convenient travel bundle might actually be a hidden tax in disguise, all that stuff. So travel smarter and spend less with help from NerdWallet. Follow Smart Travel wherever you get your podcasts. Hey guys, welcome to Armchair Explorer. My name's Aaron Miller. I'm a travel writer and your host. And today we've got the first of two special episodes we're doing with Red Bull. Yes, Red Bull people. How cool is that? This one comes from Red Bull's podcast called To Be Superhuman, which, let's face it, if anyone knows how, it's Red Bull. And it's a great show. In many ways, it's a lot like ours. It's about ordinary people doing extraordinary things and extraordinary people doing insane things. It's produced in a similar way, really immersive production, great storytelling. The host, Rob Pope, is really cool. He's got a nice, natural style. He's a great guy to hang out with. So if you enjoy this show, I think you're going to enjoy How to Be Superhuman too. And this is a little taste of it, but there's everything from terrifying climbs and kayaking down waterfalls to searching and running across uncharted mountain kingdoms and lots more. I think you're going to love it. The link is in the show notes, or you can just search it up wherever you get your shows. But enough of me. Here's episode 1 of series 3, How to Be Superhuman. It's about something called the Rhino Run and the cyclist who rode 1,700 miles across South Africa and Namibia on basically no sleep. It's insane, yes, funny, and inspiring too. You're going to love it. Here we go.
Abdullah Zeinab is racing through Africa on his bike. He's been riding for 7 days.
It's like something just came into me like a light bulb, like a thunder struck from heaven.
The race had nearly broke him, but now he was just hours from the finish line, with only one man between him and victory.
It was just like, this time you're going to go and you're not going to look back at him. It was almost like someone was saying to me, don't you dare look back.
They were side by side, eating up ascents like they were nothing, gliding over rocks and sand like it was freshly laid tarmac.
I remember these two people came out to watch the race in the middle of this like hilly desert section, and they were screaming, go, go, go.
It was the dead of night in Namibia.
My front light was about to run out of battery, but I just high beamed it, and I put my head down, and I just thought, don't look back, and just go as hard as you absolutely can.
Abdullah could sense his rival dropping behind him, feeling his heavy breathing fading into the blackness.
I just started screaming. I had never screamed like that in my life. It was weird. I literally roared like a lion.
I'm Rob Pope. I'm from Red Bull. This is How to Be Superhuman, Season 3. We're back. It's been a little while, which makes me even more excited to bring you some new and incredible superhuman stories. In this season, we'll be meeting people like Tara Dower, the woman who set the fastest known time on the legendary Appalachian Trail.
I think I was building up all of this emotion and all of this anticipation, and I wasn't letting myself fully feel it. And then with 1 mile left, I just let it all go.
Or Kathy O'Dowd, who overcame tragedy to become the first woman to climb both sides of Everest.
I'm thinking, this isn't going to work. this woman is going to die. And then she spoke to me.
And Jessie Dufton, the blind climber who takes on some of the most terrifying rock faces in the world.
You can hear the panting, you can feel your heart hammering in your chest, feel your hands are kind of starting to sweat.
12 new stories about people who go to the very limit of human endurance. I can't wait for you to hear them. Before you start, just a reminder, there are already 2 seasons of How to Be Superhuman ready for your ears. So if you've never listened before, go back and try our old episodes. I don't like to blow my own horn, but I think they're pretty good. Also, we really want you to get in touch and tell us about your superhuman adventures over the past few years. It could be anything from hiking up a hill for the first time with your new baby to doing an ultra marathon in the baking heat. Send us pictures, videos, stories to superhuman@redbull.com. And if they're really good, we might even invite one of you as a guest on a future episode. Can't wait to see what you've been doing. Okay, on to episode 1. This week, we're talking to an unsuspecting hero of the cycling endurance world. Abdullah Zeinab was a young man growing up in South Australia without much direction. At the age of 15, he became obsessed with lifting weights and breaking the pain barrier. And it's this obsession with being out of his comfort zone that saw him shoot to fame, conquering his home country and America on 2 wheels. Everything was going smoothly until 2022, when he decided to take on the infamous Rhino race, a 2,750 kilometre slog through the baking hot South African desert. Little did he know, it would change his life. An encounter with a rival cyclist would shatter his self-belief and in turn teach Abdullah for the first time what he was truly capable of. But before all of that, Abdullah's journey began with a visit to his mum's. Except she wasn't exactly living down the street.
My mum lived in Adelaide, so I frequently went from Melbourne to Adelaide at the time.
Now, most people would drive or even fly the 1,000 kilometres along the South Australian coast.
I didn't think it was far at the time,
He decided to make the journey
so I thought, okay, I'll ride there.
on his bike. 1,000 kilometres on isolated, scorching hot Australian roads is a pretty big mission for anyone, especially a complete novice.
My training at the time was pretty limited. And I remember the first day, I didn't even have lights. I didn't even think about needing to have lights. It wasn't even in my awareness. I was just like, what do you mean lights? And then I was out there, it was dark, and I was like, oh my God, how am I meant to ride without lights?
Yeah, cycling's an odd one really, mate. I decided once I was going to ride my bike from Edinburgh to London, which is probably about, I don't know, maybe about sort of 640k, something like that. And I was thinking, that's not going to be that hard. But like, sort of when you're not used to that riding and that saddle just digs into you and you think, yeah, I'll be able to smash 15, 20 mile an hour out. And then suddenly you're trucking along at like sort of, 10k an hour. Just go, what? Hills? These exist? It's awful. But I've taken that train journey from Adelaide to Melbourne to see AC/DC actually. And it is a long way. So I don't think I would fancy a ride in that, like especially not just off the cuff.
It was so horrific. I can't even tell you the amount of times I cried on that ride. I would just remember eating candy and crying and just being like so overwhelmed in emotions. Like just this feeling of like I just wanted to escape, but there was like no way of escaping this difficulty.
Eventually, Abdullah made it to his mum's house, just about in one piece.
As a percentage, I would say that I enjoyed very little of that ride.
So you're crying. You probably nearly got wiped out by traffic. So how did that provide the motivation to want to do something like that again?
Most of the joy at that time for me, or at least some sort of peace, came after when you're like patting yourself on the back, like, wow, how did I get through that? That was incredible. So I was really in that state after where I was just like, I felt so proud of myself in a way. I was like, like that was so tough. I can't believe I got through that. And then you start thinking in your head, what happens if I train?
He went back and completed that journey a few more times. Each trip, he grew in confidence.
I was more so interested in seeing how I could learn to enjoy something so hard. That was really the appeal to me at the time.
Abdullah had been heading out on these solo voyages into the wild. He was falling in love with this feeling of accomplishment, of travelling to places on his own steam and grit and determination. They call it type 2 fun. Basically, while you're doing it, it doesn't seem fun at all. But once you've finished, you've recovered and you start to reflect on what you've achieved, well, that's when the real enjoyment comes out. And this feeling led Abdullah to start riding competitively. These crazy bike races that traverse countries and continents, and he soon discovered that he had an insane talent and a threshold for pain that was extraordinary. He won the Transamerica race in 2019, and he was starting to make a name for himself in this community of endurance cyclists. But it wasn't until 2023 that he faced his biggest challenge. One day, his friend called him while he was at the grocery store.
He said, "Oh, you should come and do the Rhino Run," because he's South African. He was like, "I'm organising, I think you should do it."
Abdullah did a bit of research, and he found out the Rhino Run was a pretty crazy sounding race. First of all, it wasn't on road, but on gravel, dirt tracks and even sand across South Africa and Namibia.
And I was like, I don't ride gravel, I don't want to do that.
The races Abdullah had been winning in his short career so far had all been on road. This off-road terrain would require practice, a new bike. It's almost a totally different sport.
What were you worried about on gravel? Like, sort of what challenges did you expect?
Well, I just didn't like, all I knew was riding on the road. And that was kind of scary enough. You spend years like trying to dial that in. And then just the fear of just being in the middle of it's one thing to be in the middle of nowhere on a road, a tarmac road. And then to be in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road is like another level of it bring up another level of fear in me.
2,750 kilometres, beginning at Plettenberg Bay, South Africa, and ending in the capital of Namibia, Windhoek. The route includes 35,000 metres of elevation gain. That is the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest 4 times on a bike. The first 750 kilometres is ironically dubbed the entree, taking the riders all the way west to Stellenbosch through some of South Africa's most beautiful indigenous forests, but on rough technical terrain full of rocks and boulders and potholes. From there, they travel north into the wild Cederberg Mountains via dry, tight single tracks and into Namibia. These surfaces were like a snake pit, just waiting to engineer a crash or split your tyre in two.
I was definitely very anxious going into it.
The other element to this race that was concerning for Abdullah and the rest of the riders was that it was totally unsupported. That meant no race stewards, no aid stations, no vans carrying a spare kit. If he got into mechanical trouble, ran out of water or met any shady characters along the way, he'd have to rely on himself.
It's the wild, wild west, man. It was crazy.
Despite all this, in October 2022, Abdullah travelled to South Africa and lined up at the start.
You had to roll out as a group up into this turn, and then you could go off if you wanted to go off. I knew that I was definitely had a lot of self-doubt just about the gravel and that, and I knew that in that exact moment, as soon as we turned, that, that was going to be it for me. It was either going to be like I was going to ride this thing like to the best of my ability, or I was just going to ride slow and just be scared in myself. So as soon as we turned that, I just thought, okay, it's now or never. And then I just started riding hard, and I just thought, well, here we go. We'll see what happens.
Just after Abdullah set off, he noticed one of the other cyclists.
I remember being up the road and just seeing the shadow of this dude next to me, Kevin Benkenstein.
Kevin Benkenstein, one of the best gravel riders in the world. He was also a hardened local and had grown up riding these tracks. But at the time, Abdullah didn't really know any of this.
I knew his name, but I had never really spoken with him, which was all about to change.
Abdullah didn't know that he and Kevin were about to begin a biking battle for the ages. A battle that would change Abdullah's life. Both men led the pack that first day.
He just wouldn't leave me alone. He wouldn't go anywhere. He definitely looked significantly stronger than me. As soon as we got onto the gravel, it's just like he would just. I remember the exact moment we started going downhill, and I just had to slow down. I was like, I can't keep up with this guy. There's just no way I can keep up with this guy.
Life had gone fairly smoothly in Abdullah's competitive cycling career so far. He'd won every race he'd entered.
For the first time, I felt like someone was really handing my ass to me. I was clearly affected by this guy, but that just triggered this whole cascade of emotions. He just hurt my ego, and that just bothered me.
The lack of experience riding off-road, the wild, unsupported nature of the event, and his rival Kevin's superiority in these conditions fueled the fire of Abdullah's anxiety. He'd planned to ride the 750k to Stellenbosch without any sleep. But on day 2, Abdullah took stock of himself and realised how far out of his comfort zone he was and went in search of a bed.
And the next morning, maybe lunchtime, I pulled into this town, don't know the name, and I went to a hotel to sleep. And I remember I went to the hotel, checked in, did the thing. Everything was so foreign, just navigating a shop was difficult at the time. So I kind of was like underfed in a way. And I had checked into this hotel and I picked up a few packets of these like plain chips. And I went into the room, had a shower, and I just felt so anxious. I just remember feeling so anxious and unsettled. And I just remember laying down on the bed and it's like I was having a panic attack. It was insane. I just was struggling to breathe. My mental activity was just like through the roof. Every single thought you could possibly think in the universe was just like bombarding me, and I'm just like this in the bed like, oh my God.
He called his partner back home in Australia.
And she was helping me just like trying to relax on the phone. And then after a while I was like, I can't sleep. And that really freaked me out because I was like, what do you mean you can't sleep?
Can you imagine cycling for over 24 hours and not being able to sleep?
I was upset that I had wasted all this time sitting in a hotel room. I was upset that I couldn't sleep. That was freaking me out. And then the sun was going to set soon, so that even freaked me out because I was like, okay, now I haven't slept. Now the sun's going to go down and it's dark, and that makes it even more scary. But then I was like, okay, I've got no option. I have to go. So I put my clothes on and went to the supermarket and then started again.
He made it through the night and the next day into this huge expanse of desert.
I remember starting to just tear up. It was without the sleep, man, it was just absolutely killing me.
He checked into another hotel that night and said to the receptionist,
you need to come into my room in 3 hours' time and wake me up. It's like the most important thing you can do for me. Like I made her like swear to me. I made her swear on her son's life that she would come in and wake me up. And she promised. And I went into the room and I had the exact same scenario played out. The anxiety, the shower, not being able to sleep. It was such a terrible, I had never felt such a terrible feeling, such a trapped, scared feeling in my own life in that hotel room.
The craziness of this race was definitely starting to get to him. Abdullah faced the prospect of going into a third day without any sleep.
I really started to feel like I had just drunk like 25 beers. I felt completely altered.
He got on the bike and started cycling. 72 hours with no sleep. It's staggering, really, that he was able to stay upright, never mind stay in the race. So it came as no surprise when Abdullah told me that things were about to get weird. Really weird.
There was a black spitting cobra on the ground. I remember looking at it, and it was doing its thing with its head, like and doing the spitting venom. It's like what I did not want to see.
He carries on riding, sees all these white lights on the street.
And hear all this noise, and I think, oh my God, what is this?
There were people everywhere spilling out from a house onto the road, listening to music and partying.
And they invited me in. And then I said to them, I'm going to try and sleep. I need you guys to come wake me up in 20 minutes. It's really important.
He heads into the back of this house, through a crowd of people, and tries to get his head down. But it just won't come.
I'm starting to get real paranoid. My paranoia was all-time high. I felt like they were setting me up. It was really weird. And then I had navigated my way out of this maze, and I remember running out of this building, and then it's like they were all standing there like, what's wrong with me?
Is this real, or are you imagining this?
I swear to God, it was draining in real life, man. It was draining.
Even though we've no reason to doubt the loose version of these events, it's clear that Abdullah's reality had been warped. He was in this heightened sense of sleep deprivation, on the verge of panic attacks, delirious. By this point, Abdullah had cycled through the Cederberg mountain range. Gorgeous scenery, but brutal riding. He was approaching the border of Namibia, and nearly half the race was done.
And I started feeling like, like the boundaries were just like, there was no boundaries, eh? Like, it's almost like what you think materializes into an actual physical thing in your sight. It was just very bizarre.
Abdullah reached a long section of gravel.
I didn't remember anything. And the next memory I had from that point was I was walking my bike up and down this dirt road back and forth. I didn't remember like what I was doing there and why I was there. I was so confused. Everything felt so confusing. I just had this light bulb moment maybe after like 10 minutes of this deliriousness that I was doing a bike race and I was really underslept. And then I mustered all the energy and I climbed into an emergency bivvy and I slept for an hour.
Finally, after nearly 4 days of cycling through Africa, Abdullah had managed to sleep. It was like he'd broken the seal. This imaginary mental wall preventing him from drifting off had fallen. He felt restored and rode the rest of the way to the border of Namibia. The finish line was looming, and he was still in second place.
So I was feeling like a rock star. An arrogant rock star. And I had left and I thought, okay, this is my moment. I'm going now. In the peak of my like mental arrogance, I just remember feeling this peaking in mental arrogance. I crashed. I went over the handlebars and I bent my derailleur.
The rear derailleur is located on the back wheel. It hangs down from the cassette. Its job is basically to allow you to change gear, which is pretty important on a bike ride, especially one like this. Abdullah set about trying to replace it.
My hands were so like just numb and just from the gravel. I put my derailleur hanger on and then I screwed everything back on, and then I noticed that something wasn't catching. Like it had to be this tiny screw in the derailleur hanger that would allow the through axle, I think, to actually lock. There was some sort of mechanism. Bike people will know. And it wasn't in there.
He realised he was missing this tiny screw that would fix the spur derailleur to his bike.
So I pulled the screw off my old one, and then as I pulled it off, it flew off out of my hand and into the sand.
Could you imagine? Talk about a needle in a haystack.
I just got on my knees, and it's like every time I moved my hand to find this screw, it's like I knew it was getting further away from me. But a part of me wanted to lose it too. It was really crazy because I was so fed up. I knew that every time I moved my hand, it was going, but I wanted it, but I didn't want it. And I was so over the race, and I wanted a way out. But then also I'm in the middle of the desert and there's no real way out. The only way out would have been with the media crew.
Eventually, the media crew did pull up to him.
They looked at me and they were like looking from afar, and I remember them thinking to themselves like, what is he doing, eh? It's like he's praying to the sun. And they said to me, well, we can't help you unless you quit it was kind of like, we can't help you unless you bail out of the race.
Abdullah was either going to fix his way out of this situation or quit.
Up until that point, I haven't really thought about a way out. Like I just wanted to find that screw. I know it sounds so simple, but I didn't even think about, I just thought that there would be no possible other screw on my bike that would fit that.
He began frantically searching his bike for another screw that might work.
And I had this tiny K-edge mount on my aero bars, and it was the perfect screw. And I'm telling you what, the odds of this screw are very slim. It's a tiny screw. It's not like a 5mm bolt or whatever, M5 or whatever. It's tiny. And it fitted. And I screwed it on and I was just like, oh my God. And then as I screwed it on, I got back on the bike. It felt like I was being hunted. I had that feeling like someone's hunting me, and I turned around and then Kevin was there. And it's like he went past me like Sleeping Beauty.
Kevin Benkenstein, the South African rider who'd been given Abdullah sleepless nights, quite literally, rode past.
He just looked refreshed, like he had spent 2 hours doing a skincare protocol. Like he just looked like he was glowing.
Then, Abdullah's ego kicked in. He hopped on his bike, caught up to Kevin, and they began racing.
It's like we were having a duel. You couldn't make this up, like a duel in the middle of the desert. And it's like he knew in that exact moment that I was at my weakest. I could tell. He looked at me and he just knew this is a broken man. And he knew that I had been riding all night and that something had happened. So he knew that. And it's like I knew in that moment that this guy's a savage and he's not going to hold back. And he didn't. He started time trialing and I started chasing him.
But Kevin was too strong.
He dropped me. I tried to keep up so hard, I had nothing.
And then they hit sand. Thick sand, like treacle.
And I basically came to a standstill and he just powered through the sand. And I was like walking in this hot sand and sand was filling my shoes. It was like torture.
For the next 4 hours, Abdullah struggled through this incredibly tough terrain.
It was horrific.
They were heading towards a tiny outpost marked on the map, a place he would be able to get food, rest.
It wasn't even about finishing the race, it was just about getting there and being safe and having a meal. And I had promised myself that I had got there, I'd have a meal, I'd have a shower, and I would sleep 4 hours.
This was the last chance to gather his strength before the final stretch. It was the penultimate day. Abdullah knew it would all come down to tomorrow. Judgment Day.
And then when I got there, I rocked up and to my surprise, he was sitting out the front and he looked mentally like he had a tough time. And he did because we chatted and we were just, had another one of those moments just like, what are we up? Why are we doing it? Like it was just, we were looking at each other like, what is going on? It's one of those mutual respect moments where you see them and you go, this guy's a beast. If I lose to this guy, who cares? He's obviously a high level, you know, like he deserves to win, you know? And I was just respected him. So I just thought, you know what? This whole time I had been so affected by the fact, so ego bruised by the fact that I had someone handing my ass to me, that it gave me so much anxiety, compounded with the fact that I was in the middle of the African desert and everything was going wrong. And my ego was getting shattered by this guy because he was just shitting on me. I was so sick of it. I was like, why have I let myself sink to this level? I just need to do what I know works, which is sleep a little bit, eat as much as you can, focus on yourself, and try to enjoy whatever that means, to try and be at peace with the experience and ride. And that's what I did.
I think there's something about that ultra competitiveness. You're on the road for so long, and the way that these little thoughts will get into your head and they'll be like a little brain worm.
Abdullah knew he'd almost let the thought of Kevin ruin this entire race for him.
So for the first time, I just sat back and I just thought it doesn't even matter anymore.
He slept well that night.
And then I started my final day.
Day 7, the final day. Abdullah rode freely, knowing the end was in sight now, and no longer caring about winning. Around lunchtime, he reached this luxury resort in the middle of the Namibian desert, 120 k's from the finish. He ate spaghetti by the pool, looked at his phone and loaded up some music. There was roughly 4 hours to the finish, and he knew Kevin was an hour up the road. It was an impossible job to catch him.
So 4 hours for me to get to the finish and he was 1 hour ahead of me. And I called my partner. I was like, oh, it's not really possible. You know, I was doing the math. I was like, well, 4 hours to the finish. He's 1 hour ahead. How am I going to close that down? And she was like, well, you don't know. Anything's possible. So you should just try.
Abdullah set off again in pursuit, and a strange feeling started to build.
It felt like I had already been there. And it was giving me this unbelievable confidence. I had this unbelievable confidence that I had already been on this road, that everything had already happened, that everything was meant to be prior to that point, and that it was always going to come to this moment where I was going to finally overtake him 20 k's from the finish.
This confidence was spreading from his mind, down his body, and through to his battered, tired legs.
And so magical to me that I felt like I had just, like I was on EPO or something. I just felt like my performance just went up 40%. It was like I was on drugs, like it was crazy. And I was just riding as hard as I could. And I had no fear. I just remember having no fear. And I remember just like bombing down these hills, no brakes, sliding out. It was chaos, but I just knew, for some reason, I just knew I wasn't going to crash.
There was not a shred of doubt at that moment.
I remember going up these climbs and I was laughing, and then I would go down and be screaming and sliding out. And I would see Kevin's like bike marks on the track. And it was like the first time in the race that I had seen his track and deliberately not followed it.
Abdullah had started this latest chase an hour behind Kevin. In bike race terms, that's an eternity. Especially with the finish line so close. It really was an impossible task. But then, he started seeing lights up ahead, coming closer. And he realises they're bike lights, Kevin's bike lights. And slowly but surely he reeled them in. Then, all of a sudden, they were side by side.
He looked at me and said, "This is wild." He said, "This is crazy."
They were on a tiny track, 1.5 meters wide, shoulder to shoulder.
Like it's a track sprint. And he's like, "This is wild." And I was like, I knew it was wild. But you remember, I was in this like parallel reality where it's like I had seen this happening and I was, so I would have looked crazy. And then once he said that, then I started riding quick. And that was the moment I knew he was sleep deprived because I could tell he was really fatigued.
They started racing again, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, attacking each other repeatedly.
It was like we were creating music with these little efforts.
Trying to break each other.
Yeah, and then but he was holding on. He was holding on with me, and I was like, shit, he's so strong. And then what would happen was, I'd accelerate, but then keep accelerating for like a longer period of time, and then I would slow down. And then as soon as I seen him kind of relax in his body, like kind of settle back into relaxing, I'd hit it again. So then I'd hit it again.
This almost never happens in long endurance races. The amount of time and distance these athletes have to cover means that pretty much always there's a clear winner by the end. And at this point, Abdullah and Kevin have been fighting each other for 7 days, just a few hours sleep under their belts. And now they were sprinting to the finish line, sprinting for their lives.
And then there was just this one moment where it's like something just came into me like a light bulb, like a thunder struck from heaven. It was just like, this time you're gonna go and you're not gonna look back at him. This is it. It was almost like someone was saying to me, "Don't you dare look back." And I was like, oh. And then I hit it.
He hit the gas and didn't look back.
In my head, I'm like, you're gonna get to a tarmac road. As soon as you get to this tarmac road, it's all good. And I got to the tarmac road. I just started screaming. I screamed. I had never screamed like that in my life. It was weird. Like, I'm not a screamer, but I roared. I literally roared like a lion. But it was this roar, it was a roar of like you've just overcome every single possible thing that can happen to you in a race. It was that type of roar. It was insane.
God, man, I was getting such gladiator vibes in that whole story. You know that sort of scene where they say, if you find yourself alone in fields of corn with the sun at your back, do not be afraid because you're already dead. That was your parallel reality. You're just like, am I winning this race? Or have I just crashed out and I'm in a hospital somewhere in Namibia, And your roar at the end is very much are you not entertained?
It's like your Russell Crowe going, is this what you want?
Yeah, is this what you want? Oh my God.
I've had so many Elysium moments on bike rides, where I'm just like, almost I could feel like I could just fall on this, just give up and like lay on the dirt.
And then you see the finish line, right?
Yeah, like you pull up, it was at this church on this big roundabout and all my friends were there, and it was cool. I was so just relieved. I was so relieved and shocked, and it's like I was a sports fan. I'm also a sports fan. So part of me was like a sports fan of the sport. So I'm just like, I was relieved, I was shocked. And then I was also like a fanboy of just the whole experience itself. Even if it wasn't me, I just thought it was just cool.
Abdullah had won the Rhino race. 2,750 kilometres solo and unsupported through the most inhospitable terrain he'd ever experienced. It's incredible, and it's incredible for a few reasons. First of all, this was a race into the unknown. It was the first ever edition of the race and none of the riders knew what to expect. But secondly, Abdullah was a road rider. He didn't even own a gravel bike before he started this race. But when you consider he was up against Kevin Benkenstein, one of the absolute greats on this surface, it's pretty unfathomable. Now, how had this battle for the ages with Kevin left its mark on Abdullah?
I went into the race completely doubting everything. I had really felt going into the race that it was going to fail. I really had this strong feeling and it was overwhelming me. It shined that light on it for me that it doesn't matter. You can get so caught up in how am I feeling, how am I thinking, trying to control these things that are completely uncontrollable. So it's really shown that light on me that that's completely irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant, and you can operate completely outside of your own internal narrative. You can. That doesn't control you.
If you have any comments on Abdullah's story or the show or your own superhuman adventures, message us at superhuman@redbull.com. And remember to follow the podcast, rate it, and leave a 5-star review because it helps other people discover the show. We appreciate it when you share the love. Finally, head to instagram.com/redbulladventure for more superhuman content. Next time on How to Be Superhuman.
When Rascal told me, I think it was around New Jersey, New York, she was like, we have to do 58 miles on average every single day to get the record. And I was like, this is literally impossible. There's no way I can do 58 miles a day through the Appalachian Mountains without getting zero sleep. And I need sleep.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Abdullah. You can check out more incredible stories on the podcast, How to Be Superhuman. The link is in the show notes, or just search it up. How to Be Superhuman. I think you're really going to like it. Also, next month, we have the host of that show, Rob Pope, on Armchair Explorer, doing one of our adventure episodes, our classic episodes. And he's going to tell the story of how he became the first person ever to complete the exact run that Forrest Gump did in the movie. 15,600 miles, 422 days, and 2 boxes of chocolate. It's a great, great story, and he's an awesome guy. So keep an eye out for that next month. So that's all from us. Keep being superhuman in your own ways, big and small, because the more that we look for wonder in the world, the more the wonder of the world becomes a part of who we are. Dare to be truly alive.
I'm Max Hartshorn, host of the Go Nomad Travel Podcast. Every week, I bring you a short 5 to 8 minute escape to somewhere unexpected. I cover the kinds of travel stories you don't hear anywhere else, quirky destinations, unusual adventures, and people who make the world endlessly interesting. If you love discovering new places but don't have time for a long show, these bite-sized episodes are perfect for your commute, your walk, or your coffee break. Join me on the Go Nomad Travel Podcast and explore the world in just a couple of minutes.
If you want to travel more, ideally in luxury, but without the luxury price tag, this show is for you. I'm DeAndre Koch, and on Revolutionizing Your Journey, I use my unique vantage point as a financial advisor to break down exactly how my wife and I leverage credit card points and miles to fly business class, stay at 5-star resorts, and take bucket list trips for a fraction of the cost. Each week, I share real strategies packed with actionable tips and interview some of the smartest travelers in the game to help you revolutionize the way you travel. Travel well, live boldly, and find Revolutionizing Your Journey wherever you get your podcasts.